So this is going to be a tutorial on how to quickly touch up a photo. I'm not the best photographer in the world, so oftentimes I need to touch up a photo quickly just so it looks better than what I was capable of in taking it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open my file. So I got a JPEG on my desktop, and this is an untouched photo of Kate Moss not wearing makeup, so this will work perfectly for what we want to do. The first thing I'm going to do is double click the background layer, and this turns it into, now got a layered file, and we can edit this layer now, which we couldn't do before when it was the background layer. The contrast and brightness look fine in this photo, so we don't need to edit that, but if it was a photo you took personally, you might need to adjust the brightness or adjust the contrast. So the first thing I like to do is to use the spot healing brush tool. There's a bunch of different tools here, but the spot healing brush is my favorite because you can change the size, you can change the hardness of the brush. So I'm gonna choose to make it pretty soft. Let's say 25%. And then I'm going to zoom up on the picture, and it's not the highest resolution picture, but that's fine. And I'm just gonna resize the brush to take out these little blemishes on her face. And if you just click right in the spot, you can quickly remove them. And it doesn't always work the first time, and sometimes it works rather strangely. So, like that's really being a bit weird right there. I'll go back in and I'll fix that with the clone stamp tool. I use the clone stamp tool for areas that don't work well to use the healing brush tool. And like you wouldn't be able to, like if there was some sort of blemish here, using the healing brush tool, like I'll show you just so you can see an example. See how that really messes it up? It tried to blend this with her eye. So you can't do areas like that. It's areas where all the surrounding area around it is about the same color and texture. So I've taken out all the major obvious flaws on her face. So what I'm going to do now, and this is always a good tip whenever you're doing photo editing, so you copy your layer. If you hold down Option and then drag it up, I can copy my layer. So now I've got the same layer twice, which is fine. So I'm going to go in with the clone stamp tool, and I'm going to fix this area right here on her chin. So if you hold down Option and you click, I'm sampling this area right here, and it should work pretty well to cover up that little error I made with the spot heal brush. And I want to fix this right here. She's got some little lines right here that we can definitely fix up. And so most of you will notice is she still has quite a bit of wrinkles and all these little fine lines on her face, and even just these areas of shininess. And so how do you get rid of that? So the best way to do this is, so we go up to Filter, and if we go to say Blur, Gaussian Blur, and click that. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure Preview's clicked and see how the whole image is now showing blur. We want to blur it just enough so that her wrinkles are either, I mean, you wouldn't really want to take them completely away, maybe just so they're less obvious. So I'm going to try this right here. You can still see them a little bit, but they're not as apparent as they were. So I'm going to say OK. But now it's like the whole image is blurred. We don't want that. So we take this little tool over here that's underneath the clone stamp tool. It's called the history brush. And we need our history panel up when we do this step. So if you don't already have it up, you'll go to Window and you'll go down to History. So you'll see that the most recent thing I just did was Gaussian Blur. So you take your history brush, and if you check the little box right here and then click back to the step before, see how her face isn't blurred anymore? But because I'm using the history brush, I can now go in and paint a blur into areas where I want the blur. But maybe that's a little too much, so I'm going to actually turn the opacity of the brush down to, let's say 40% is a good number. And I do want it soft. I don't want hard edges. I don't want, oh, it's all sharp here and then this really sharp-edged soft section on her face. So I'm just going to use a soft edge brush, and I'm just going to paint around some of the areas that I want to just lightly take out some of her wrinkles. And it's a 40% brush, so you can go over the same spot 2 or 3 times to make it more blurred than one pass over with the brush will do. And it also really helps a lot. This blur technique helps a lot with getting rid of, do you see like right around here, she's got these really fine white kind of hairs on her face. That doesn't always look the best in photo, so we can just take that out pretty easily just by blurring them. And I do want to avoid her eyes. I want to avoid her lips. We can do her chin right here. But you want to avoid any area that needs sharp lines for defining. Like her lips need to be pretty sharply defined in order to look, I guess, like human lips. I'm going to blur it a little bit here. The shine on her nose is a little bright. And if you size down the brush a little bit, maybe just go in here a little bit. Oh, but I went over her eyebrow a little bit right there, but you can't really tell, so I'm just going to leave it. Okay, I'm going to see what it looks like now when I zoom out. It maybe looks, let's see, I'm going to blur it a little bit on her forehead here. It looks a little odd to me. I think I'm going to go back in with the clone stamp and maybe fix this line here and then this here, because from a distance that looks a little weird to me. And I always like to have a line sample, aligned turned off, because then I can sample here and then just sort of use that same spot wherever I want to. Instead of align sample, I can show you the difference. So option click and then align sample will see how my little crosshairs, it travels with the brush. If I turned off align sample, it does follow it, but however, I can click here, and the crosshairs is still in the same spot. But with align sample, if I click here and then here, see how the crosshair moved up in the same distance that this moved up? So I don't normally like that, so I'm going to undo what I did right there. Turned off aligned. And I'm just going to go in, hold down option, click, and just kind of fix up a little of this area that looked a little odd to me. Let's see, we can maybe soften it a little bit. Here, texture was a little rough on her chin. I'm going to try to bring that back in. I took out some of the shading when I did that. Okay, I'm going to zoom out. It looks a little flat on her chin. I probably used the blur a little bit too much there, so you just have to sort of tweak things and think about what looks good and what doesn't. So I'm going to copy this layer and pull it up. And so let's say the picture was cropped in such a way, I'm going to go in and crop this photo just so I can show you. So what if the photo had been cropped like this and her head was not in the picture and you're like, oh, I wanted her whole head in the picture because that looks odd to me. So if you use the crop tool again, you can enlarge the canvas. So I'm going to enlarge the canvas. But like, oh no, her head has gone up here. So what we can do is magic wand this blank area, and then we want to expand the selection a little bit. If we don't expand it, there's going to be a little white gap in between what we did. Oh, actually this is the wrong step. Just a second. So we actually want to use the lasso tool. Just the plain little lasso that we can draw with. So this is how I do this. I draw in where her head looks like it should be, and then overlap a little bit onto her existing hair. And then we can go up to edit fill. And this is always a bit of a gamble. Sometimes it looks really strange and sometimes it works out really well. So on the fill menu, we're going to say use content aware, and you can just say mode normal, opacity 100%, and say okay. And that actually didn't turn out that bad. It's a little odd looking right there. We can go in with the spot healing brush and just sort of smooth it out a bit. Oops, I didn't mean to take it away right there. But just smooth it out a little bit. And then it's not as obvious. And then we could also go back in and just use the magic wand. And this is where we want to go to modify. So select menu, modify, expand. And I always say about, let's say 1 pixel. This is a pretty low res image, so we'll say 1 pixel. Then we want to do the fill again. So if we say edit fill, and this might turn out really strangely, by the way. If it does, we'll do it a different way. This might actually copy her hair and put it up here, and we don't want that. So content aware again, okay. Okay, see that didn't work, so I'm gonna say undo. And I'm just gonna simply use the clone stamp tool. So if I enlarge it, then sample the background here, and I still have the aligned turned off. And I want opacity turned up all the way. I'm just gonna dot this in here. And it's a little off the color, so I'm just going to go back in and carefully smooth this over. And that's what we would do if the background had been missing, at the top of the image had been missing. I'm going to go in and actually, so I'm going to use the clone stamp again, but I'm going to go fix some of these things in here, like I'm going to put a white background in because right now I'm seeing the transparent checkerboard background. So I'm going to put a white background in underneath everything. So go back to our top layer. And this looks a little weird right here. So I'm going to go in and fix that by, let's see. I'm going to try just sampling here. And sampling here. And then I'm going to try the spot healing brush to maybe get it a little bit better. And see, let's see. I do not like how that's turning out. So I'm going to go back to my clone stamp and just turn down the opacity to about 25. And then I'm going to sample some of the darker stuff over the top. Okay, that's a little bit better, but this looks weird right here because this is really sharp, and you realize here it's like you can see all these flyaway hairs and stuff. So we want to soften this edge. So we can do the same thing where we did the filter and Gaussian blur, or we can go over and use this blur tool. And you're right, we could have used this to begin with, but the blur tool I like just for really targeting just a specific area. I'm gonna blur some of these a little bit. And that still looks a little odd right here. So I'm gonna go in and fix that with the clone stamp tool. I'm just gonna put the background back in and make the brush a little bit harder because it is so soft right now. It's making the hair look very, very transparent where it shouldn't be. So it doesn't look perfect right here, but with a lot of tweaking, you could make it look better. So I'm gonna go back in and open our original photo so I can show you the comparison between the images. That did not work to open that. Let's try it again. Ah, it's because I already have it open. So I'm just gonna save this. Save it as a Photoshop desktop, fine. And then go back and open my original JPEG. And if we just zoom it into the screen, Command 0 will put our whole image in the screen. So it's just a slight difference, but see how much cleaner and better her face looks? Just tiny little subtle changes. And Like if we wanted to go through and edit it very heavily so it looked like the cover of a fashion magazine, we could do that too. But this is more natural editing so that the person still looks like a human being that's not, you know, coated in makeup. Thanks for listening to my tutorial, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave comments under the video. Thank you.